So just a little bit of background about me before we get started. I spent about 10 years in market research. So I worked at Johnson & Johnson, at Nielsen, doing all types of consumer research. And then I spent the last 3 years working at a knowledge sharing software company and really got bitten by the bug of communication and knowledge sharing and transparency and why that's so important in teams. And I read up on it, studied it, and have started consulting teams on how to communicate. And like Jan said, this is what I say all the time to my clients, is that communication it's not easy and no one is born good at it, but it is a learnable and teachable skill. And it just takes practice and you can get better at it. And it's just every day, can we get a little bit better about communicating a little bit more seamlessly, sharing knowledge, being a little bit more transparent. So I hope that today we move the needle a little bit forward. Great. So we'll talk about why miscommunication is so common. It happens all the time. Why? What are some clear communication basics and how do we drive action? So not just communicating, but actually communicating so that an action takes place. When communication breaks down, you feel like you're doing everything right. How can we figure out why it might be happening? And then look at some case studies, how to get better, and some scripts that are helpful. Sometimes it's just nice to have something pre-made, pre-baked when you're having conversations that you have over and over and over again. So why is miscommunication so common? This is a quote that I love. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. We think all the time, we're communicating all day long. We must be getting our message across, but most of the time, actually, we're just making noise and not actually communicating. And what does communication look like? It's an ongoing process. And sometimes we think we're communicating and we're not, or we kind of forget that we're communicating. Every time we chat or we text, our body language, all of that is communication. And the important part is that it's received by the person that we're talking to. And they come away, every time we're just chatting on Slack, that they come away with a full understanding of what I'm trying to say and a motivation to react to it, because it has to be two-way. So the person or the group that you're talking to knows, fully understands what you need, what you're trying to say, and is capable of taking the next steps or transforming that. Right? You're asking someone to do a task, and I understand what you want me to do, why we're doing it, and I can then take the thing that you're asking me to do and transform it and pass it on to the next person so that they can take it into their brains and transform it. And it has to be this ongoing cycle all the time. But it is not easy. Miscommunication happens all the time. So when you think about all the times that you've been communicating, even just in the last week, how often have you hit that communication bullseye where you say something and the person on the other end of that message or that phone call or that email repeats back to you what you've said, and you're like, yeah, exactly that. That doesn't often happen. Usually we kind of are somewhere here like, oh, that's not exactly what I meant. Let me clarify, thinking about that ongoing cycle again. Or nope. Or worse of all, not even close. That's not what I meant at all. And the worst part, the worst possible thing that can happen is you're communicating, or you think you're communicating, and you end up here at the not even close, but there's no loop back. And so someone's like, great, I think I got it. And then they go and work and do something, and they end up completely in the wrong place. And we just have to kind of think and do that feedback loop, make sure that we're always feeding back and repeating back what people say, so that we make sure that we're as close as possible to yes, exactly. So we want to make sure that we're not unaware that we haven't hit a bullseye. We think we're great. I said it exactly perfectly. You go to this, I'll talk to you in a week, and then nothing is done. Teams are complex systems. This is one of the reasons that communication breaks down or miscommunication happens. We are individuals, dynamic, changing human beings. We are very, very complex just in our own rights, right? We're all in therapy for a reason because it's hard to figure out what's going on in our brains. And then you introduce two people and there's a lot of nuances in any kind of relationship. If you've ever had a relationship, you know that it can be complicated sometimes. And as soon as you get a whole team of people, even just 3, you have a very complex system. And each of these relationships have their own unique challenges. And we're going to talk a little bit about each of these and how to combat that. So like I said, when you're kind of in your own brain space, you live your whole life from the second you're born to when you die in your own brain, looking out of your eyes, hearing with your ears, seeing everything from your perspective. And it's difficult, even sometimes when you're just by yourself, to articulate what what is happening in your brain. That's a challenge. We talk about that. When you have a partnership, you're talking between two people, communication is a challenge. Like I said, it's not easy and no one is really born good at it, mostly because we don't typically spend a lot of time reflecting and articulating what we're thinking. And when you get to the complex system level, driving action is a huge problem. Even if you articulate perfectly, you're communicating with the team, your meaning is communicated and understood and can be played back. Driving action can be difficult. So how do we combat each of these things? Reflection, communication always starts with you. What do you want to say? Who is your audience? What is it that you want them to do? And thinking through, when I want to drive action, what is that? Starting with taking a deep breath, really reflecting and thinking, what is it that I want to say? And then communicating it, thinking about your audience. Where is this person in their mind? And then how can I make sure that there's an action at the end of that? Even if there's understanding, how do I make sure that something comes out of that? And hopefully we'll learn some lessons there. So this is a really important thing. We talk about this a lot. What we don't say, people don't hear. We have our own perspective, and as complex and nuanced as our own lives are, everyone that you talk to is equally complex and nuanced. And so I think a lot of these sentence starters are helpful to bring your perspective not only in your own light and be a little bit reflective of where exactly am I coming from, but helping someone else see also this is the perspective that you're coming from, so they can maybe understand where there's a disconnect if that happens, when that happens. It's like, here's my perspective. It's not a fact, it's just, this is what I see. It's not the whole picture, this is my little part of it. Based on my prior experiences, this is the approach I prefer. There's 100 ways to skin a cat or to write a line of code. But this is the approach that I prefer because I have all this experience, and that's where I'm coming from. This is the method I was trained in. Sometimes we forget that we were just taught this way, and that's okay to say. This is just the way that I was taught. Maybe there's a different way. Based on this data set, this is a huge important one. I'm not sure about in programming so much, but definitely in market research, when you talk about incidence, that the population is this much. Well, is it based on what data set is it? Because I have a different number. I thought something else. Given the context that I have, I believe, very important word, that this is the appropriate response. And I'm assuming that I have the full picture. And if you just kind of think, even if you don't always say those sentences, at least having them in mind, that these all contribute to your perspective and your opinion. But if you don't say this, if you don't make that explicit, people aren't going to hear that and they're not going to know, and you just end up kind of creating friction. So what are some basic things that we can do to make sure that miscommunication doesn't happen or happens less? So start from the very beginning. Why are we communicating? Almost always, 99% of the time, we're communicating for 3 reasons. We want to gather information. I have questions, I have holes in my knowledge. I know you know something and I need to get it. We want to provide information. This is important for you, and I know why it's important for you, and you need to know this. Or I need you to do something for me. Delegate work. And so it's helpful to keep that in mind. Articulate that purpose. Very first thing, why are you communicating with me? Are you providing me information? Are you asking me for information? Or are you asking me to do work? Just being clear about that. And again, thinking, why am I communicating? Always start with yourself first and then communicate. Take responsibility. This, I think, is hard to swallow sometimes because everyone wants to say like, yeah, we're a team, you know, it's both of our responsibilities, but you're the communicator, you're the one initiating communication, and you need to take responsibility for that person's understanding. So you need to take all of your perspective into account. You need to understand the person you're talking to or the audience you're talking to, what's their context. And if there's misunderstanding or someone is confused, it is your responsibility as the initiator of the communication to make sure that the full meaning is understood. The way to do that is to consider your audience's perspective. Always think about your recipient. What approach have they been trained in? How is their background different than mine? What's their context? Where are they sitting in the office? What conversations have they not been a part of? What conversations have they been a part of that maybe I haven't? What data do they have? All these kinds of things play into where their mind space is and will impact your communication. And also thinking about your own gaps, right? They also have information, been a part of conversation that you haven't. So how do each of those actually come into play? When you are articulating your purpose, we talked about those 3 things: gather, provide, or delegate. I've seen a lot in some companies where you even put the subject, the purpose of your communication in your email line in subject, like in all capital letters. That's one way of doing it, but even just one line in a chat, I need information, I need you to do something for me. Just setting initially, why are we communicating? Why am I interrupting you in your important work? Why am I here? And then taking responsibility, that can come to life in a lot of different ways. Choose the right channel. Is it a relationship that's already strained? Is it someone that doesn't want to sit down and read emails? Maybe it's better to jump on the phone or go see them in person rather than send them yet another email that they're going to struggle to read and not understand and just get more annoyed with you. Choose the right channel. Use really descriptive subject lines, or if you're making a Slack channel, make the Slack channel really, really descriptive. Don't be afraid to over-communicate, and we'll go through some examples later also. Never FYI spam. This is one that I really, really, really hate, and it can come in a couple different ways. You read a really good article or you see something and you just throw it out. FYI, this is a great article. There you go, read it. That's not helpful because you're taking someone's time. Every time you communicate, you're taking someone's time. And you want to say to someone, I think you are going to find this interesting because of the project you're working on. And here's what I took from it, and I think you'll find that interesting. It takes just a little bit more time at the upfront, but it's going to help the person you're communicating to so much more, not only take more away from the thing that you really do want to share with them, but it also frames them and like, okay, that's what I'm looking for. And now I'm incentivized to read that article because I know what I'm looking for. And we can actually have a productive discussion about it. This also can happen with the email thread. You have, like 10 people back and forth on this email thread or in a chat, and you're like, you know what, we have to pull this other person in. FYI, this is happening. That's not helpful. You want to give someone context. This is where this started. Here's all the points. Let me draw your attention to these specific things where I need your advice. What's your purpose? I need your advice. I need you to step in. I need to escalate this. I need this to be assigned. We need a project team, whatever it is. Use one word per concept. This, in my software experience, happens a lot in feature development. So we started off talking about the feature. It was going to be the notification feature. But people kind of all called it something. It was really amorphous when we started. We weren't sure what the feature was really going to look like. So we all had different names for it. Once something comes together and is a thing and it's defined, decide on what the name is and call it that for the rest of the time. And make sure you don't continue to call it different names. It causes a lot of confusion. Use lists and bullets. I had a boss, God bless him. He would not accept emails that were not written in 3 bullet points, 10 words or less each. And I think, looking back on it, that was excessive, overkill. Sometimes emails do need to be longer. But it was a really good exercise to think about, is this an appropriate subject to be emailing about? If I can't write it in 3 bullet points, 10 words or less, maybe it should be a meeting, or maybe it should be discussed somewhere else. But be concise, and lists and bullets often change your mindset to be more concise. Helpful. Present a logical information flow. It seems silly to say, but it is really important to think about, why am I talking? What do I really want to achieve here? Who's the audience? And present the information almost like a legal argument every time you communicate. And this is what I want to achieve, and this is the path to get there. Consider your audience perspective. Address your communication. There is nothing that annoys me more than in emails that's sent out to 15 people that says, hi team. And it doesn't really talk about what the purpose is, and it's just, hi team. And no one really knows what to do with that. That's how balls get dropped. So you want to say, hi Jan, here's what I need from you, and here's exactly the background. Include all the relevant context. Don't make people dig and think, oh yeah, that was documented somewhere. Okay, I'll have to look that up before I can answer. Just provide it all the attachments, all the context provided in your chat or in your documentation, wherever it is. Link to all the resources. It, again, takes one more second for you, but you know exactly what you're talking about. You know the link to that documentation page. You know the link to that website that you're talking about. So just include it so that person doesn't have to dig and open up an opportunity for misunderstanding, or they go to the wrong place or the wrong old documentation. Just link it right there, and then CC those mentioned. That again is just a transparency thing. If Jan and I were having a conversation in the hallway, and I said, oh yeah, I'll go talk to Peter about that. It's nice when I actually do talk to Peter about it, that Jan knows that it happened. So just, hey Peter, I talked to Jan, here's what we decided. Also, if there was a misunderstanding and we were kind of running through the hallway, when I tell Peter, yeah, Jan wants you to start this project, Jan can come then interrupt and say, actually, that's not what I said. You misunderstood. So it's nice to just close that loop and make sure everyone's on the same page and transparent.
This is why it's so important not to use DMs in Slack.
Agreed. Absolutely. Yeah.
Always use the public channels.
Any other questions or thoughts about that? Great. So once we communicate, we've done all the upfront steps, we're communicating. How do we make sure that we're driving action? So the rules for driving action. I say again, reflect first. Take time, just a minute. What do I really want to say here? Why do I want to say it? Why is it important? When you're communicating, anytime, even if you think, oh, it's just a quick Slack message, it's fine, it's just one quick thing. You're taking someone's time. Someone has to read that message and think about it. So you owe it to everyone else as the communicator to reflect first and make sure that when you are asking for someone's time, that it's valuable and you've really thought about it. Be explicit. That goes back again to linking things, but also not leaving any details out. If you are speaking implicitly or just kind of beating around the bush, or maybe saying something in not such a direct way, you are opening yourself up for incorrect interpretation. It is much more helpful for the person receiving that communication. I know exactly what you're talking about. You're not beating around the bush, you're not making me read between the lines. I know exactly what you're talking about. And I know exactly how to interpret it. And if I disagree, we can have a productive, firm conversation with facts rather than feelings. Plan ahead. So once you've reflected, you know exactly what you want to say. Make sure that you're not leaving everything until the last minute, because again, you're asking for someone's time. And if you have to interrupt them because something is really urgent, that's frustrating for the person that has to then take their mind out of their project that they were just on and respond to your message, get you the information you need. That's the button that you have been putting on. So try not to let things get urgent. The way that I do that, typically, I don't know if you guys know that matrix of urgency and importance. Anyone ever heard of this?
Yeah, I know, but I don't think it's as well saturated as you might think it is.
As well saturated. Was it Peter Drucker that?
No, Eisenhower, isn't it?
Eisenhower, yes.
Eisenhower, really? So there is a 2x2 matrix that exists that's like urgent and important. And you want to spend your time obviously on things that are important. And where we get sucked, where oftentimes like fires exist that people are freaking out about, are things that are high urgency and not important. They just feel important. And so every day, on my list of things that I have to do, I do one thing that is important and not urgent. Because if I wait until everything is urgent always, things that are important but not urgent are eventually just going to move over and become urgent. And if you get ahead of it and just every day, just one thing that I know is important, that's not on fire right now, it helps you get ahead of stuff. So, how do you drive action? Beat around the bush a little bit, but now I'm going to say explicitly, limit the work that your recipient has to do. And that means time, so linking everything, making sure all the attachments are there, making sure that you're all on the same page, that you're providing all of the context. Just limit the time that they have to go and search for things, but also their mental strain. Don't make people think every time they communicate with you, I have to figure out what you're saying, I have to figure out what's next. Just make it really easy for your communicator or your recipient to say, like, oh yeah, I know exactly what you need. I can do that. It's right here. There you go. And then always consistently clarify, because things are changing all the time. Just always clarify, here's the vision, here's where I want to go, here are my goals, here, like, the intended audience of this is just internal. The intended audience of this is going to be eventually our customers. And consistently put people's minds into, this is where I'm at, so you can have a discussion about it. Because if you leave those things implicit, then if something's changed, it was originally just documentation just for internally, but we decided, oh, it's going to be better to just send it out to customers or put it on the website. That changes a lot about how I'm going to write that documentation. So just clarify all the time and limit the mental work and the time that your recipient has to do when they're communicating with you. And as simple as it is, just close with a call to action. I have this thing, this purpose, this project that I'm working on, and here's what I need from you. I need this feature by this date, written this way, so that it can do this. Just very clear. At the end of every communication, here's what I need from you. Diagnosing poor communication. So you think you've done everything right. You did all that upfront, you reflected, you have your purpose in mind, you close with the call to action, still stuff's not working. How do you figure out what might be going wrong? This is one of my favorite recipes for results. It's a framework that was invented by Dr. Mary Lippitt in the 80s. And I think that it is so useful. I use it all the time in all of my communication. What she says is that you need these 5 things in order to get change, to get results, to get full understanding. You need a person to understand the vision. You need them to have the skills, incentives, and resources so that they can do what you're asking, and they need an action plan. And if any one of these things are missing, you're going to have issues. And so the way that I use this framework is this way. So what happens when something is missing? If we don't have vision, someone's going to be confused. So if someone is coming at you and like, I don't get it, I don't understand what you're doing here, maybe you need to clarify the vision. If someone is feeling anxious, if that's what you're feeling from a person, maybe they just don't have the skills. Maybe they need documentation or training or something else. If you're just, I don't want to, I just don't feel like it, maybe they don't have the incentives. Very rarely, by the way, is it just one of these things. You're always given, it's usually a combination.
What if you have all of them?
Then we have different
Then
problems.
you have vacation.
If someone's just feeling really frustrated, like, oh, this always happens, it's always the same thing. They don't have the resources, which is usually time, which maybe there's a process that you need to change or something, maybe get ahead of it, work on some important things that are not yet urgent. Maybe everything's always urgent and I just don't have the time. Or if you feel like nothing ever gets finished, it's just like, it starts, we have everything, we understand where we want to go, everyone has the skills, the incentives, we're all getting paid really well, I have all the time in the world, nobody's on vacation, but just nothing ever gets finished, it all gets started. Maybe there's no action plan, maybe that's where you should focus. So I find this, this framework really helpful, but actually most as a diagnostic tool for when I look down this column, what am I feeling from people, what am I getting from them? It helps me focus in on where is my miscommunication happening or some misunderstanding. Little case studies. We'll go through just a couple examples of okay communication, good communication, but how might it be better? And I think I'm really careful here to say that it's not bad. This communication is not bad. You're trying, you're talking, that's good. Good job. Maybe it can be better. So when you're creating a Slack channel, I've created one that's just called Strat Planning, and the purpose is let's just discuss 2019 strategy. It would be better if the channel was called 2019 Strategy Planning. Who knows how many channels I have? Let's just focus, it's 2019. And then be a little bit more specific in the purpose. I want to talk about goals, KPIs, and action plans. And I probably could even add action plans for each team. More specific, better, more descriptive, more explicit. When you're writing an email, a bunch of typos is fine, it's good. Please find attached. Let me know if you have thoughts. That's good, fine. Here it is, you attach the thing. But it would probably be better if I wrote in the subject line, here's the 2019 strat plan. I need you to review. Here's the slides for your review. And give just a little bit of kind of where my head is at, what to expect before you open this attachment. I have these chapters in it. Probably I could even add, here's where I think that you could provide some feedback. I'm not sure about the 2018 achievements. Based on this data set, this is what I have, my own perspective. And then closing with a call to action. Because here, and this is where probably the frustration is going to happen, let me know if you have any thoughts. I haven't told Ryan when the meeting with the board is. I haven't told him when I need his feedback. I just said, here you go, please. But I need your comments by Thursday, close business. Helpful. I've set his expectations a little bit better. I told him when I need stuff back. Task management. It's already in a task manager, not in an email or chat or like a post-it on someone's desk. That's great, it's already there. But it's just not as clear as it could be. So here I've clarified where to draft these tweets and what to include, what things that I'm looking for, setting that expectation of what the deliverable should look like. And I've assigned them in due dates. That's helpful. That is going to drive action, not just communicate, yes, we need 50 tweets prepared. Back to email. Here again, please see attached to the documentation. And here's where that feature comes in. This feature was not properly named. It's called the notification center, also known as email integration, the notification feature, push notifications, all these things that we've talked about. What would be great is if a month ago, when the documentation was, or the feature was fully defined, and we started to build it, we said, we're calling this a notification center, that's it. And it's attached here versus a link to something that is ongoing and can be updated. So here I've completed the documentation for the notification center feature. And then a little bit of background about why I'm sending this to team, not a good idea. Why I'm sending this only to this subset of people. This feature has been a little bit contentious. We've heard a lot of confusion. I want to send it to you, the team leads, first to make sure that you understand before we share it broadly with everyone else. So you can familiarize yourself, you can ask questions. That's why I'm sending it to just you. Here's what you might want to do with that: marketing, sales, customer success, and support. Here's where I think, based on what you're working on, based on your perspective, what you might use this for. And then once you've done all this, please send it along to your teams with me on CC so that the loop is all closed. This is better. Fine. This is better. And so lastly, some communication scripts. So those are some examples. I think also there are conversations that happen over and over and over again. And it's nice just to have in your mind, how should that conversation go? Or what are some just quick and easy scripts that I can plug and play? For these things that happen, these are conversations we all know. When someone's made a mistake, when there's been a misunderstanding, or when you're providing feedback. Those are conversations we all know. So these are some scripts that I think are really helpful to use. Mistake, kappa. Does anyone know about kappa? No. So this is back in my pharma days, where these ISO things. Corrective action, preventative action. When you make a mistake, how do you rectify that? First, articulate the problem. No comprehensive list exists for all customer key contexts. It doesn't exist. And what's the impact of that problem? Very important. Well, each time we have to make announcements about the product and that needs to be sent out, we have to create that list. That's frustrating and wastes time, and people are annoyed. Well, what's the root cause of that? Well, there's no single owner because all the account managers are different. They've all been set up maybe on different branches, and it just varies by customer. And it's never been set up that way. Great, helpful. Well, what's the corrective action? First, let's build that in a way that can be used by everyone. Build that database and make sure that everyone that needs to send out information about the products or announcements about new features has that database, has access. Let's build it. But that's not enough. And oftentimes, and this is why I love this framework of corrective action and preventative action, too often we stop here. There's been a mistake made, something didn't go right, and we're like, yeah, it's fixed. Look, it's fixed. But how do we keep it from happening again, and how do we make sure that that's a lasting solution? What's the preventative action? We have to create an underlying system that updates this database, ties into existing processes. And one of the best ways of building processes is following the money. Usually the best way. So when billing is set up, all of our customers are billed. That's important to the business. When the billing is set up, how about we also automatically update this database? And now it's a cohesive thing. That's a real lasting solution and not just kind of a half-baked one. Misunderstanding. This one is also one of my favorites. I always want to start. When we talked about people's contexts being different, no one is an idiot. And that is an assumption that you always have to start with. And it's hard when you're frustrated and we feel like we've had this conversation 100 times. But no one is an idiot. Everyone is a thinking, bright human. Period. With their own perspective. So first thing is take a deep breath. Really. Always before you communicate, you want to reflect. Before you talk about a misunderstanding, take a deep breath. Because raising your voice or getting nasty or being passive aggressive is only going to make the situation more tense. It is not going to help. Remind yourself that no one is an idiot and someone has a perspective that is different than yours, and you, the communicator, it's your responsibility to figure out where that misunderstanding is happening. And ask yourself, and this is the kind of the key to this framework in this script, in what context is this true? That will help you see from someone else's perspective. If someone is saying something that you're like, that doesn't make sense, you're just wrong. Step back and ask yourself, how could this possibly be true? Are they working with a different data set? Have they been trained in a different model? Is there something that is so out of my own perception and my own context that could help? In what context could this be true? I took this once I had this with my boss. We were just talking past each other constantly. And I said to him, I want to teach you this script. What if I said to you, I believe the world is flat? He was like, you're an idiot, that the world is of course not flat. I was like, yes, but what if I subscribe to the world is just a computer simulation and we're all kind of alien bots and we're just living in a computer and the world that the aliens live on is flat. He was like, that's so stupid. I was like, I get it. I get it that that's taking this to the umpteenth degree, but it's helpful to kind of ask yourself, in what context could this possibly be true? Because no one is an idiot. And then start again from another place. Use one of these. It's just so slow. Use one of these sentence starters. So if you're really just constantly talking past each other, no one is an idiot. So where should I start? I've been talking, here's my perspective, here's my perspective, here's my perspective. Working, maybe start again and say, you know what, you're not an idiot. Maybe this is where the problem is. This is how I was trained to do it. This is the data set that I'm coming from. This is the information that I have. Is it not the full picture? Tell me what I'm missing. And just start again from another place. Every time taking a deep breath. And providing feedback. It's another 2x2 matrix written by Kim Scott, who had worked at Facebook for a while. She wrote this book called Radical Candor, and it's something that I really love because it speaks to what I believe so firmly is that we need to speak explicitly and directly. And what happens is when you, so she has this care personally about people, you want to care personally and you want to talk directly. She says challenge directly, but just be explicit. If you really care for someone, but you are kind of beating around the bush and not being explicit, if you're not helping them, you're being empathetic. Yeah, you care about them, but you're not helping them grow. If you don't care about them and you're not speaking explicitly, this is where really passive aggressive happens, where manipulation starts to happen, politics happens. That's not helpful. When you don't care, but you are very direct, then you're just being obnoxious. But where you want to live here is in the radical candor sector. Nobody's an idiot. I care about what you think. I want to understand your perspective. I care deeply about you, but we have a real problem. And being explicit about what that real problem is and challenging directly. So the script that I use here, IDEA is the acronym for it. So the first thing that you want to do is identify and investigate. And again, not beating around the bush, but like, where were you on Monday? Were you sick? You didn't come to the meeting. I needed you there. Did something happen? You want to care personally about them. It matters to me, but also this didn't happen. So, being direct. Describe the impact, again, and not beating around the bush here. You weren't there, and my team is missing important updates for the week. And now what we have to do is chase you and your team to get those updates. That's not optimal. This is one of my favorite words. Can we agree, please? Can we create some common context that that's not optimal? Everything's delayed, it wastes everyone's time. But saying that and not beating around the bush there. Empathize, because you care about them. I can tell that you care, and this is probably a conversation back. The person is probably reacting. I can tell that you really care about helping people. You go to get them what you need, but you feel too stretched, right? Is that what's happening here? You didn't show up because there was another meeting. You feel too stretched to get that. That's a shame because you do good work. It's a shame. My team relies on it, but they're just not getting it. And so we have to figure out how to move forward here. And the last piece is, again, create an action plan. Action plans are so important to driving action. Obviously, driving action. Why don't we, I'm here caring about you, why don't we approach the marketing team together and try and prioritize both meetings and projects. And then let's touch base, time bound, in 3 weeks to see if things have improved. Because this, can we agree that where we are is not optimal and we need to move forward together. So that's another really helpful script for conversations that we have all the time. We give feedback all the time. And where we want to get is giving feedback in radical candor rather than manipulation or passive aggressive.